Think about it that way. That's kind of how a lot of these no-code platforms will work. It's a visual way of building things. Just because you build and you launch this app, people think, oh my gosh, it's going to take off, it's going to work. No, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's starting up a business. Yeah, so it's very interesting. I always said I was never going to have a job behind a computer. I remember saying that to myself growing up, and here we are. So how I got into this,
According to Gartner, 70% of all applications developed by organizations today will use some form of no-code or low-code technology by 2025. Now, that's a significant increase from the less than 25% mark of 2020. Thankfully, we have Dan Hafner here today to discuss building and launching your own no-code solutions and SaaS platforms. Dan Hafner is the founder of Dapper mobile applications. He is also a prolific techpreneur, as you will get to see. Dan, how are you today?
I'm great. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, great to have you here. Dan, if you don't mind, for the audience, could you tell us what exactly you do in the tech space?
Yeah, so I love that stat that you just started off with. That's very exciting and inspiring. So what I've done is I've built a basically a small boutique type of service or agency, specifically inside of the no-code space. So we build SaaS applications, marketplaces, or generic, even internal tools for companies, entrepreneurs, businesses who are looking to take advantage of these things, right? So we're not even really niche specific. It's really more, like I said, kind of a boutique, bespoke type of approach, right? So it's a very kind of problem-solving type of service and type of thing, because it's kind of fun because it's different problems, different approaches.
You have quick fixes for people in
sometimes, yeah, and sometimes it's entire platforms, just like you had mentioned and alluded to as well too. So yeah, there's always a new challenge to overcome, and that's part of the fun with it,
Interesting. Just backtracking a bit here, Dan. Let's get our audience to understand the person behind all of this. Do you mind telling us how you got started with tech in the first place? Your journey, your career journey from the very beginnings. What inspired you to get into this particular domain of no code, and how has the journey been so far?
Yeah, so it's very interesting. I always said I was never going to have a job behind a computer. I remember saying that to myself growing up, and here we are. So how I got into this, I had a couple of different jobs out of school. I was doing like background investigations, a couple of different things. I met my now wife in college. We were kind of long distance for a little while, and I was moving to where she lived. And I kind of had to figure out, different things to do with jobs, got into tech support, just kind of learned the things on my own. We were engaged, and it was almost like a 2-year engagement, right? And I started to gain a little bit of weight, and I was like, oh, this is not going to work. I'm not going to be able to fit in my tux, and there was a bunch of different apps out there that would, kind of help you with weight loss, or I was big into running at the time. And one day it dawned on me, I was like, I wish there was this app that would do this thing where I could kind of leverage myself and kind of get accountability with myself, but I couldn't quite find the right one that I wanted, right? So I went down this path, and the first thing was, I was like, I wonder how much it would cost for somebody to build, right? So I went out online, filled out a bunch of, looked for agencies, looked for developers, whatever. I got quotes for what I wanted to build of at least $100,000, if not $250,000 for this type of application. I was working in tech support at the time. I didn't have that kind of cash laying around, I was like, okay, that path's not going to work. So then I was like, well, I'll just learn code. Like, maybe this is a good transition for me to kind of get into this, learn to do that. That lasted about a week or two for me, to be honest. More power to people who can do that. It was not my cup of tea. It was like learning an entirely new language that I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, that's not my cup of tea, But in the process of doing all that, of researching things, learning different things, I came across these things online that were, hey, build your application without using code, without spending a ton of money. I was like, oh, interesting. So that kind of started me down this path of finding all of these different platforms like Bubble, Buildfire, all these different ones like that. And I probably went through, 10 or 20 of them I was like, okay, here's my idea. I'm going to go in, I'm going to sign up for the free trial, and I'm going to try to build it in 2 weeks before I get charged. And probably did that 10 or 20 times. And every time I would go through one, I was like, this doesn't really quite do what I wanted to do, things like that. Finally landed on one that I was able to build it with, launched it, put it out there, and launched my own app. You know what I mean? So that's kind of how I got into it. And then the agency piece, the freelancing piece kind of came about because I had built that so many times. I was like, this is actually a really, really cool thing. I found out there's a lot of these platforms have what's called a white label or a reseller license, where you can basically put your brand on it, which is largely what I've started to do. And now I kind of was like, okay, here we go. I had a podcast at the time that I still run today. And, it just kind of starts very small. Hey, can you build this for me? Could you do this app for me? Could you do that? And then it turned into, I could actually turn this into an actual business and make money with it. So that was kind of my humble beginnings with it, and how I've kind of grown it over time. It was from my own idea.
By the time you were investigating how to build your own app, fitness app, you were already in tech, right? You were working as some tech support agent, you said. But
yes,
at that point you had already meddled in tech to some extent. But before
yes,
that,
and I actually,
how was your career looking at that point, just before you got into tech support?
well, and actually at the time too, I had transitioned from tech support to actually a QA assistant. So I was doing a lot of manual user testing for the consulting firm I was working for. So we were using a lot of web applications. We were doing kind of manual testing, usability testing, user experience testing, that kind of thing. So that kind of how I cut my teeth on the web app world, and kind of learning how different applications work and how they're responsive and things like that. And that's why I feel like I can also poke fun at developers a little bit, because I got to work with them in a very close setting for a lot of years. Because developers are a different breed of people. They're very, very different.
You could say that again.
At least the ones I got to experience.
Very true. Very true.
But before that, but that was also kind of one of the reasons why I had decided to go into this, because as I mentioned with my girlfriend, now wife at the time, she's in the medical field. So we had moved every few years, right? So it was 3 years here for medical school, and then it was residency, and then it was fellowship, and then a job. And so we've been hopping around all over the place. And I kind of realized it got very hard to hold down kind of steady employment at that point. So I had basically decided, like, okay, well, I got to figure something out, got to do something on my own. So then that's kind of how I was like, okay, no matter where we end up going, I'd be able to be, kind of a nomad with that kind of stuff. But yeah, it was going pretty well. And that was really the only reason I transitioned from the QA testing thing. Because actually in between there, I did take a couple of sales jobs. I had, cold calling, just 100 calls a day type of pound the phone type of job. I did work for a marketing agency for lawyers for a little bit, where we actually did Facebook ads and, advertising funnels for lawyers. So then it was kind of all these different mashups. I was like, okay, well, I can build stuff and I can sell. So let's just do this all together.
Interesting. So you sort of pivoted from marketing into tech at some point, and you started with tech support, and it was mostly taking in calls, technical support calls at that point. Were you also troubleshooting technical issues coming in via tickets at that stage? Okay. Then you then went to QA, and after QA, you got interested in building apps, and you found a way to build yours. Do you mind sharing what was the no-code platform you used to build your very first fitness app?
Yeah, so like I said, I built it, 10 or 20 times on different platforms. And the one that I ended up landing on and launching it with was Buildfire.
Buildfire.
It was, Buildfire was the one.
We are not sponsored by Buildfire, by the way. We're just...
Yeah. that was the one that I ended up going with, because it again, there's very, very few no code platforms out there that will be comprehensive, that'll be able to do everything that you want them to do, possibly. And that's why part of my approach with building things is, when somebody comes to me with an idea they want to build or something they want to do, I tend to be platform agnostic and try to really get a hold on what you're doing, because there's different platforms out there that are built for different reasons. Like, for example, there's a really cool one that I started in called Good Barber when I started building for other people. But it's very, very good for content-based apps, or even like e-commerce, Shopify type of apps, right? It's very, very good for that. But if you want to build something like a SaaS platform or a marketplace, you can't really do it on there. It's just not, you're trying to fit a round peg into a square hole, kind of. So that's kind of where it's like, okay, well, there's different solutions out there for different ideas. Some people just want something very, very simple, very easy. Some people want something very, very complex, where you need something like I would put Bubble and, Adalo and those types of ones kind of up there, where you can kind of customize the most,
Yeah. No, that's good to know. It helps the audience understand the archetype that goes into tech and actually goes on to build their own no-code platform. Thanks for sharing that. Dan, what exactly is a no-code app, if you don't mind?
Right. There's a little bit of a misnomer there, because, everything is built on code ultimately. It's kind of... The term no code really comes from you're not coding to actually build the thing, right? There's I think a lot of people are familiar with like a GoDaddy or a Wix type of website builder, right? Where there's point and click and there's drag and drop. Think about it that way. That's kind of how a lot of these no code platforms will work. It's a visual way of building things. So a lot of people who are very visual, who like to kind of see how they can manipulate things and design things, very creative minded people, they really like this, because I can point and click. Oh, I need I want this thing to be this color, and I want it rounded, and I want it to be this pastel color, whatever. So it's a visual way of building software without actually going into a code base and writing HTML tags and different things like that. That's in essence what it is. Yeah,
makes perfect sense. And that would involve a lot of drag and drop, I guess, pre-made templates also being used, and workflows easily created via visual UIs. No, that's good to know. There is also low-code apps, right? How does this relate to no-code then, the low-code apps?
Yeah. Those I'm not 100% more familiar with, just because I've really focused more in the no-code space. But even low-code, you can basically take existing, code bases or embeddable code, and you can kind of copy and paste them, right? So a lot of times what I did with my very first app was I used a platform called Jotform, which is, a lot of people are probably familiar with that. It's a very, very big form-based builder, which is kind of a no-code way of building forms. You just drag and drop different fields onto the form, and off you go. But what it does is it gives you a little clip of embeddable script, of like JavaScript, that you can go and embed on your website or whatever. You can do that with your app as well. We did this for a couple of people with some live streaming technology, was where we actually took a service where they could, and you can take that code. It says, hey, you would take this and embed it on a website or wherever, and you can embed that in your app. So then your app can actually have like a form of live stream, like a Hulu or a Netflix or something like that, right? So the low code way is really kind of, it gives you that access into not only just, I have pre-built components, pre-built templates that I can't manipulate or do anything with, but I can actually go in and I can edit some code at that level and change things and manipulate things even more. So, but you do have to have a little bit of knowledge for that. Yeah.
Makes sense. Essentially, it allows for more flexibility and customization of your application, if we could put it that way, which is quite interesting. Right. Yeah. Dan, what would you say to people who are concerned that businesses like yours, not to put you on the spot here, but businesses like Dapper mobile application, it's taking away the joy of being a computer engineer, of coding and programming, which has been, the bread and butter of the tech industry for some time, right? We're now with the no-code platforms and people being able to whip up an application in a matter of days. In a weekend, you could sit down and create 2-3 applications, and even an entire SaaS platform can be built in a weekend via these no-code platforms. It goes without saying that this is some form of a threat to the careers of many people in the computer science field. What would you say to people who look at what you do as a challenge and are concerned about businesses like yours gaining momentum and eventually taking over the tech space?
It's a very, very good question, Newton. Very good question. I would answer that with, I've spoken with, I've taken a bunch of boot camps when I was starting out with people who, one of my early mentors actually was someone who came from, he was a developer for his entire life, for like 25 years, right? And had jumped into Bubble, which is one of the biggest platforms out there. And it was very interesting to hear his perspective on things, because he was very, welcoming towards it. And he said at first he had a lot of apprehension, just kind of like you're mentioning, like, this is a threat to me? I don't really think that it was very like a pessimistic view of, well, I don't really think I'm going to be able to do this. I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Is this going to really solve what I'm trying to do? And he's obviously made that leap into, this is actually very, very neat in certain ways that I can do this. Obviously, I don't think no code is to the place yet where it's fully replacing complete custom coded things. I don't know if it will really ever be there. I mean, I hope it does someday, at least, for my case, but for someone out there like that, like what you're saying, there's certain use cases that you can really lean on it for, just like you mentioned, for proof of concept, for, you don't have to build the login, the sign up modules, like they all come pre-built for you that would take you like a while to rebuild every single time. And it really matters. Are you interested in moving faster with your idea, or are you interested in, kind of doing things the same way you've always done them? Even myself, I had started, like I mentioned, all with no code in one platform, and then, but I had to evolve in my capabilities, in my, path as well, to realize like there were people coming to me wanting applications that, I could not do in X platform. It just wouldn't allow for it. So I had to learn, I had to adapt to now be like, hey, I need to build this over here. Even though I don't really know how to do it, I had to kind of figure it out. So I think the same thing is true, or could be true for people in that space. It really depends on how, and I mean, you think about the AI world too, like that's a threat to everyone in a lot of ways, even people in the no code space. I've done a lot of research on that. And I think I've chosen, at least this is my mindset with it, I've chose to not look at it as a threat, but rather as a immense opportunity to really start to learn. Like if you become a master of the tool, you never really become replaceable. Like when something like a Chat GPT comes out, you can think, oh my gosh, this is going to replace this job and this job and this part of my job and this part of whatever. But what, I chose to do with it was learn it, manipulate it for myself. And now that thing has helped me move so much faster inside of some of the mundane things that I don't want to do as a business. Like, hey, I need to send out an email. Okay, put it in ChatGPT. I don't have to think about it. I outsource it. Boom, that's done. Hey, I need to put up, an edit to my website. Put it in ChatGPT. Put it, it helps me move faster. So these no-code tools inside of the developer world, at least, can kind of serve as that ChatGPT of, I need a proof of concept. I don't need to spend an entire day coding this. I need an hour to kind of come up with, mock something up. How am I going to actually make this work? And then I can go over here and build this a lot faster and do this a lot faster. So it really it's a mindset thing, in my opinion. It's do you choose to see it as a threat, or do you choose to embrace the opportunity?
Makes complete sense, Dan. Threat opportunity, tomato. But thanks for that. You see, I looked up your business just a bit to see what it does. I got to understand that you have the ability to also integrate your solutions with artificial intelligence. Is that right? Could you enlighten us on that? How exactly do you integrate AI with applications you build?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I haven't gotten super down the rabbit hole with it yet. We're kind of working on a couple of things to bring that to light here, probably hopefully by the end of the year. But the beauty of it, and this is kind of, the beauty of a lot of the no-code platforms, is they come built pre-done with API calls and everything ready to go and set up, which for any of the developers out there really makes things a lot simpler, right? As long as you know how to use and set up and get API calls going, that really extends the functionality of your application. So, and I know you're asking about artificial intelligence, so that's where I'm going with it. But for example, if you wanted to have a news feed of political news or sports news or whatever you'd want it to have, you can go out there and you can pull in outside data into your application, and then boom, it's not really artificial intelligence, but it extends the functionality of your application, right? So the beauty of that is there's a lot of these, Claude and, OpenAI, they have API keys that you can now insert into your application. And you can, it's a credit-based, type of API call or setup, but that really allows you to do a lot of different things, whether it's language-based, now image-based. I know they're coming out with video-based things in the future. That really has allowed, we've helped people set up a couple applications where you can do copywriting things for sales stuff, like, hey, I need an image for this, or copywriting for this, or whatever, and then boom, it just spits stuff out. So really that external connection really allows you to extend the functionality of your application in a lot bigger way. And then honestly, there's even some things that we've done that they kind of serve as, I call it like shadow AI. It's like something it's not AI at all, but it makes it look like AI to the end user. And for example, what you can do for that, what I mean is you can run actions inside of the application based on user actions. So if you have a marketplace, for example, like a Fiverr or an Upwork, and you click on a profile, or you send a message, or you like something or whatever, you can then run actions in the database, run counts, do whatever. And then you can have a feed set up that then shows recommended views or recommended things. And there's really no AI involved in it, but it makes it look like the end user, like, oh wow, we always say, like, how does Facebook know what I'm thinking? How do those ads come up where I'm like, do they hear, like, what's going, you know what I mean?
Machine learning helps with that as well. Helps with understanding the preference of the browser.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of the extent that we've done it. We haven't done a whole lot more advanced. Like I said, I'm actually working on a couple of things for that in the near future, to go way down the rabbit hole with machine learning. But as far as different ideas like that, that's definitely doable with the no-code tools. Yeah.
Interesting. If you don't mind, could you walk us through? Let's say I am a client looking to build a SaaS app. We would like to understand the experience I would get if I come to your company. Do you mind walking us through how that would look? Essentially, I'm looking just to understand. I think most of us are well versed with how a typical SDLC looks, software development lifecycle. If you have all of that discovery phase that happens initially, where you get to discuss with the client, gather their requirements. It could be as user stories, or and then later maybe create some POCs for them. After which, I guess in your case, it's not going to follow all of these sequential steps, since you've probably already automated a large chunk of the development pipeline away, since it's no code. So if you don't mind, just walk us through how that experience would look like. And if it starts from your website, we would like to know just how exactly a client comes to you how do you get to understand their requirements? How much of the work do they have to do? And how does that eventually result in the end result they're looking for?
That's a good question. I've never actually been asked that. This will be interesting. Okay. So again, there's kind of a couple of different paths, because some people come with a half-baked idea. Some people come with full Figma designs ready to go. Just, I need this built, right? So there's a couple of different paths to it. So we kind of adjust that as it goes. But by and large, that's exactly what it looks like. Book a call, discovery call, which is free. And we talk through, hey, what the heck are you trying to build? Why are you trying to build it? Have you done any validation with this? Is this even something that has product market fit eventually? What kind of research have you done with it? Because before you actually make an investment, you kind of want to know, is this thing going to flop ultimately?
And you've got the marketing background to really help them. So
yeah, it's not even a technical conversation at this point. It's should this idea exist? And it's a weird thing at this point, because you would think you would be like, yes, I'll build an app. We'll build any software for you. But, I've learned over time, it's like, so I'm a hunter as well too. So my dad always said, like the real work starts when you actually pull the trigger, right?
What type of hunter?
You actually harvest.
Deer?
Deer, yeah. That's mainly what we do. My dad and I will go turkey hunting or bear hunting sometimes. Mainly deer, yeah, archery. For any hunters out there, like once you actually harvest an animal, there's a lot of work. You have to field dress it, you have to drag it out, you have to do all this stuff, right? So it's just because you build and you launch this app, people think, oh my gosh, it's going to take off, it's going to work. No, there's a lot of marketing, there's a lot of work that goes into it. It's starting up a business, But that's basically the first step, is discovery call. Okay, here's what this is going to be. Here's what you kind of envision it to be. Here's the product market fit. From there, we kind of put together, okay, here's probably what this will cost in a ballpark type of sense. And we offer people a bunch of different payment options. You can do what we do as milestone. You can say, okay, here, we're going to break this into 5 phases. And you could pay, milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, on and so forth you go. So there's a bunch of different options for people for that, because it can get pretty expensive if you're trying to build, super advanced, big giant things. But it can also be very affordable if it's a little more simple and not complex. So from there, if you decide to actually go with that, we get that started, and then there's basically an onboarding session where we'll kind of go way deeper than that discovery call. Exactly what you were talking about. User stories. What are the features that are must-haves? Like what do you, when this is launched, what must this have? And then that's where we differentiate, you separate the wheat from the chaff, so to speak. You say, okay, here's a nice to have and here's a must have, because my experience, every feature in everybody's app is must have. It's like, I gotta have this. And it's well, do you though?
You gotta force the must go on them, must have, should have, could have.
Exactly. So that's kind of the first piece. So we're like, okay, we kind of have a scope of what we're trying to do. And then we put together, like, basically from the client end, like there's a little bit of work involved, because we need to know your branding information, like what colors are you interested in, what's your color palette, what kind of fonts are you interested in, what's your look and feel, what kind of similar apps are out there that you want to draw inspiration from in terms of look and feel or functionality or whatever. And there's just a quick document that we basically run through people with, and it's 4 or 5 pages, and you just fill this out and boom, it gives us pretty much everything we need. So that's the bulk of it. Then at this point, this is kind of where it diverges, where we said, okay, people that have 0 designs ready to go, it's just kind of this idea in their head still, or people that actually have it mapped out, built like a prototype type of thing in Figma or something similar. Because then it goes down to the design phase. And this is really where I have a lot of fun anymore with these new AI tools that have come out. Because what I've started to do is implement this, and this has been I can't tell you how much time this has saved me in the past year of these types of projects. Okay, you have this idea, you don't really know what it looks like yet, you don't really know how you want to do it. We have some AI tools where we can just literally prompt stuff, and I'm talking things beyond ChatGPT, right? Where it'll literally spit out Figma-esque prototypes in a matter of a couple of minutes. And it can be done in, mobile views, desktop views, dashboard views, whatever you want. And we can basically use that to do about 90% of our prototyping, 95% of it even. And it's like, hey, what do you think of this? Oh yeah, this is great. Let's change this. Let's do this. So that really has cut down the design and prototype phase to be very, very small. It used to be a lot, right?
I can imagine.
So once we kind of get that, once we get that nailed down, then the building starts, right? Then we start going into the actual platform we're going to build with, based on whether, what your timeline is. Some people want it done yesterday. Some people want it done in 6 months. Doesn't, kind of varies. So then we just go through the building, and then there's just like you've talked about, SDLCs, usually weekly type of engagements. I love, if you have not used Loom for your business, I highly, highly recommend it. Again, he's probably not sponsored by Loom. It is, people love it. Like I get so many people that are just like, dude, these Loom videos are so helpful. They save time in meetings. They are just like chef's kiss for this remote type of collaboration, working together like this. And there's a lot of other softwares out there.
I agree. I've used Loom. Very good.
Yeah. And that usually saves an hour meeting. It's like, hey, I'll make you a 5-minute video and boom, off we go. And then that's just the way that it's gone. But that way, it's not, we don't do it in a waterfall fashion of like, okay, here's your application, here you go, off, what do you like to change? What would you like to change? What don't you like? So they get to be very involved throughout the process. Oh, I like this so far. I kind of would like to change this. I don't like that. I like this, whatever. So then it's just built iteratively like that. And then once we get to the launch phase, we go through the launching, whether you want it on, just a web application on a browser, or to the actual app stores of Apple and Google. Because that can actually be that was what I learned back in my very first running and fitness app, was getting it approved on the Apple and Google stores is not always as easy as it seems.
I know.
Depending on the application too. And then after that, that was honestly where I had stopped. I had drawn the line for a long time. And it was like, okay, we're just going to develop, we'll build you the thing, and then off you go. Good luck, right? I've started to learn that I really, when you feel like incumbent, like I can fix something and I don't, like you kind of have that feeling of like guilt or whatever. So what I've done is I've put together an entire product to then say, okay, here you can take this now and you can go market it and you can grow it and you can scale it based on the problems that I ran into in my application. Okay, how do I now take all the people that are signing up? Where do I get that information? How do I continue to market to them? How do I continue to make sales? How do I continue to actually grow my downloads and make money at this thing that I just spent money building, to actually make sure that it's successful and it goes on. So I've put together a whole package for that called Launchpad. It's an entire software that we can talk with people after. Not everybody uses it, not everybody chooses to, but that helps you with funnels and automations and all kinds of different things like that too. So that's kind of where it becomes this comprehensive type of thing instead of we'll just build it for you and off you go.
I find it really fascinating, the similarities between what you do and traditional product development as well. Having worked in product development myself, it seems to follow almost the same sequence of activities, right? It's a lot of design phase work that needs to be done, understanding the client's requirement exactly as they want it, and then going back to build what they want and coming back to present it to them to approve or to make further suggestions. And I'm sure I speak for many in the audience as well when I say I don't think many are expecting that much flexibility is allowed for clients, right? To actually specify in user stories that level of detail, what they would like. Because when people hear no code, low code, the first thing that comes to mind is typically some kind of combination of Legos to build an end product, so you have modules already pre-built and all the clients can do is just to specify colors and then you build. But it's really interesting. That's what I was asking. And now people can get to hear that they could actually come in, specify whatever it is they're actually looking for, however complex that may sound, and your team would go back and just try to make that happen. I presume there are some cases where you would have to call back the client to let them know, hey, this is not possible. Would you want it done some other way?
Yeah, but again, you never come, and I've learned this, in many of my many situations, you never come up empty-handed. You never just call and say, "Hey, we can't do this." You come with a solution, right? Don't give me problems, give me solutions.
An alternative.
So every time you come, you say, "Hey, like, look, we actually did this recently. I had to do this last week. It was like, hey, the way that you're trying to do this, it's just," and I'm very upfront with people. That's part of the discovery piece. Is that's where a lot of that qualification takes place, where they're saying, okay, I needed to do this and that and the other thing and whatever. And I'll say, okay, point 1, 2, 3, and 4, yes, we can do whatever it ends up looking like. That's definitely possible. Point number 5, I'm like, I don't really know if that will be something that we could actually pull off with the technology that we have. I might be able to, but I don't know. So like, I'm very upfront with that. And then, again, you call back, you'd be like, hey, look, like, I don't think that's going to really be possible. But I think if we do it this way from the experimentation that we've done, it will accomplish basically the same thing. Okay, great. And I've never had someone be like, well, actually, no, that's not going to be good enough. It's like, no, it does the same thing. It just does it in a little bit of a different way. There's multiple ways up a mountain. That's an analogy I use a lot of times. Like when you're climbing a mountain, there's not just always one path. There's usually like a bunch of different ways that you can go up and around and down things, So as long as you get to the summit, you're good. So yes, that's where the discovery piece is so imperative, of being very upfront to say, hey, look, like, this is what we're doing, and this is what might be a little bit tricky, just so they're upfront. And usually people are very good with that. So
yeah, well, that makes sense. What would you say to people who are kind of still skeptical about no-code apps? I'm keen to get your assessment of the quality of no-code apps when compared to that of full-code apps. Anything you think the viewer should be worried about?
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's always, I wouldn't do anything. I even to this day, I will not touch anything HIPAA related at all with a 50-foot pole. I will not do it. I don't care if you pay me $1 million. I will not do it.
So you do not accept clients looking to build medical apps then? Correct.
Yes. No, not
You're losing out on a lot of,
sorry,
a huge chunk of clients there.
Maybe. I've read too much about it. I've had too many.
I know HIPAA can be a pain, especially for the US users.
Yeah. But I think the other thing too that, especially the no code. So I did on my podcast, I'll plug my, I did a specific episode on this with Alex Sanfilippo. He and his partner had built the Podmatch platform in Bubble on a no code platform. And they have just recently rebuilt it in a custom code. They migrated it to a custom coded solution. And I sat down with Alex and his partner, and we talked through, I wanted to know why was that decision made? What went into that? How did that work? What were the logistics of it? What are the benefits? What are the drawbacks? What were you thinking? Like, I asked all those questions. So I would highly recommend your audience go check out that specific episode, because that was one where I was like, this is a perfect case study to point people to in those situations. So go listen to that episode. Forget what number it is, but it's on. We'll put it in the link for you guys. That's highly worth your time. It really, really is, because the one thing he talked about too was scalability. And that was, I think, one of the bigger issues for a lot of people was, okay, when I build this thing on a no-code platform, a lot of the times those platforms can actually limit the actions that are available. You start to have lots and lots of users using it concurrently. It can really stretch the bandwidth of it. And that is a concern that some people have, because it's going to crash, it's going to do this, it's going to do that, right? So I would recommend you guys listen to that, because Alex actually gives a very, very interesting answer on that. So yeah, That's basically my answer.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. I think the no-code apps overall have evolved to a state where they're just as reliable as the typical traditional full code apps. I would assume so, and if not, maybe they are even better now that they are getting augmented easily with artificial intelligence, helping to automate a lot of corporate processes. So yeah, that's a good answer there. What would you say to clients who boycott your company because they would say the name of the company does not have this gender neutral adjective used in it? So the Dapper mobile apps for the male, or do I have to explain that further?
I guess I kind of understand the question. I might.
This is 2024. I'm sure the question is not so far-fetched from reality. There will be some people who would say, hey, make that gender-friendly to some extent. You haven't thought about it.
I understand. Well, I really haven't. I know. I mean, I'm not gonna. I wouldn't. I guess it might not be the answer you're looking for. I wouldn't really care. I guess, for lack of a better word. I mean, the name is what it is. I'm not gonna. It was kind of how it got changed. Was at one of my sales jobs. I always came in and I dressed very dapper, right? Like I was always, kind of, wear a tie and would look, try to look as best I could. And, I got the nickname Dapper Dan. So that was kind of where the name came from. Yeah, I'm not really interested in changing it, right?
It's all good. I wasn't really expecting an answer from you, but thanks for giving that a go.
Okay.
Dan, you mentioned something which I found interesting, the launchpad aspect of the service you provide, right? That piqued my interest. Just how much goes into the service you provide in that regard? Can clients who have built their apps elsewhere come to you for support with launching and going to market successfully?
Yes, that was part of what the idea was, right? Because you look at, and I got very fascinated with so I go out and I look at, okay, when there's a new application launching, there's always going to be a website for it. There might be Facebook ads running for it that point to not even the website or the app, but an actual like subdomain or a funnel that's advertising.tiktok.com. And I was like, how does all this fit together? Like how does this whole digital ecosystem where they have the app and they have their software and they have these funnels and they have this and they have that, how does that all fit together? So that was what the idea for Launchpad was okay, you could have a website template for your application. You could have a sign-up template. You can have different automations. So when someone joins, you have an onboarding sequence that has, you just fill in your email variables of, here's our link to our app. Here's the benefit number 1, benefit number 2, benefit number 3. And it's meant to be more of a plug and play type of thing. So you can actually, because what you need to do is market, right? What you need to do is go out there and promote and drive more downloads and drive more people onto the platform. You don't need to be doing all the different manual work on the back end more than you have to. So for example, and this is the idea, when I first built my running and fitness app back in the day, I had all the people coming in through BuildFire, right, who would sign up for the application. And I was like, I got to market to them. I got to do something to them. You can do push notifications and you can notify people that way. But I would take them from over there and then I would manually once a week put them into my MailChimp of like, okay, here's the, there was no way I knew of at the time to do it. I know now there's things like Zapier and Make and automation and stuff, but at the time I had no idea, right? And I was like, oh my gosh, how do I do all this? This is not sustainable for me, and that was the idea was, so now you just have one system. It's like, okay, boom, they get added over here, they get zapped over here, and then they're just in your ecosystem, and that system is just set up and running. It's a flywheel, right? So that's really what it's meant to be. And we're starting to be more aggressive in targeting, people who already have built applications that haven't even built anything with us or done anything like that to say, okay, look, you're looking to grow, you're looking to build. Here you go. You can do this. We're actually including a piece that has some webinar capabilities now, where you could do a short webinar for your application or a demo or things like that, and you could drive sales or signups or anything like that too. And it all works together. So yeah, that was kind of the idea with it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's amazing. Having this one-stop shop solution you could give to clients, including the marketing part, which is increasingly becoming more and more challenging now. You've got a lot of AI doing a lot of the marketing and PR work. Yeah, you've got something really good going there. Bravo to you, Dan. Bravo.
Thank you.
Dan, what is the biggest mistake you've ever made in your tech career journey? And what did you learn from it? If there was one.
Interesting. I think the thing that comes to mind is kind of what I talked about earlier. Was there was a time where I was trying to. This was back several years ago, or even longer, when I was really learning how to do this in the beginning. From a technical perspective, I was trying to fit the round hole into the square, or the round hole into the square peg, or whatever you would. Yeah, square peg in the round hole.
Who cares?
Because I learned, I got into situations where we would have people wanted to build this particular application, and I was trying to build it over here in something that wasn't capable of housing that thing. But I didn't know any better. I didn't really have the skills and the capabilities, or the different platform knowledge or things like that they've been able to do today. So I got into trouble a couple of times with a couple of projects where I was like, I don't really think this is going to be possible. And it was very possible, but it wasn't possible with the current technology I was using, right? And so I think when I think back on that, I think that was really more of a mindset mistake, of a growth mindset mistake, of clinging on to something that I knew so comfortably for far too long. And this kind of reminds me of what you talked about earlier when you asked about the transition from coding to no coding, or being that kind of developers. Is if what you said is true in the beginning around, if all these projects and these platforms are going to transition to a no code type of approach, and you cling to the old one, I mean, there is a chance you could be left behind. There is a chance that you could have
a very high
things
chance
like that happen. And it's I'd be surprised if that stat came true, to be honest with you. I do think that might happen over the next 5-10 years. I don't know if it'll be by next year, but it is growing, and the numbers don't lie. Like, there are more and more. The space is taking over more and more and more. So when you cling to something old for too long, out of pride or out of just an unwillingness to learn, or things like that I had always done, I was able to move so much faster once I kind of got past that and ventured into something new. And I was like, whoa, like I can do so many more things, and just have so much more flexibility, because I was willing to let that go. So that was probably the biggest mistake I had ever done. Yeah.
Interesting. And yeah, that's insightful message there you've just shared. Dan, what are your predictions for the app development industry in the near future?
I've said this a couple of times. I mean, obviously not only what you said earlier with the no code proliferation and stuff, but I also have been saying this on a couple other shows I was on. One of my predictions is that you're going to see this segmentation, or almost, I hate to say the word, but segregation of platforms. And by that I mean there's more and more of these platforms that are popping up that really tend to kind of be on a political ideological divide, right? You see something like a Truth Social, or a Twitter, or TikTok, and I think it's really, if you don't have that kind of ideological alignment with the platform, you tend to go somewhere else, right? And this is just from a user behavior perspective. but then there's other ones popping up that say, hey, we stand for these values and we stand for these values, and they're juxtaposed, right? They're actually opposite each other. So one of my bold predictions for it is you're going to see more of that. You're going to see more people who are saying, hey, you know what? Like, we're tired of being over here in this space. We're going to build our own platform that is with these beliefs or these values, and we're going to only let people in that are in that space. You know, I don't particularly think that's a good thing.
It's more division in the future.
Yeah, but I've seen it again. I've seen it happen, and maybe I hope I'm wrong with it. I think that's just kind of one of the trends that I'm seeing with it. Yeah, I don't mean to leave like a pessimistic note on it, but that is one of my predictions for it. Yeah.
Yeah, pretty stark outlook there. But it's not. Is it possible? Yes. Probable? I would say, maybe not. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Not so much. I think humans at the end of the day, they would work towards something that's better for themselves, right? We're not just going to fold our hands here and let the trend go the other way against us. No, that's very insightful. I would close with this, Dan, and this is about artificial intelligence, as you're using that to some degree in your business. Final question. Do you think artificial intelligence would bring about the end of humanity? And would your apps support that? I'm joking with the last part.
I don't know. I would tend to say no. I have watched a couple. There's a really good movie out there called The Creator. If you haven't seen that one, it's a really good movie about AI and the end of humanity and stuff. I think J-Lo did one. It's like Atlas or something like that.
I've seen that. I couldn't watch all of it. I got bored after some time. Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that before as humans, we tend to be very cavalier with technology. No one really had kind of an idea of how big the internet would get, and it kind of got out of control and out of hand of regulations and that type of thing. But then it got reeled back. I think that's kind of how how things usually go. Is technology can go so much faster than governments can go or regulations can go, and those are always playing catch up. I don't know. I think there's a lot of documentaries out there that'll kind of make you think and make you really be like, oh my gosh, like that's crazy.
Yeah.
But the end of humanity.
Think about it. We haven't even gotten to AGI yet. Maybe when we have that.
I would say maybe someday. I would say maybe, but not within our lifetime. I don't think you and I would see that.
Not
I don't think so. Maybe a few hundred years from now, maybe when when all this goes. But that would probably be my final. It would be, I'd say maybe someday, but not while you and I are alive, probably.
Thanks a lot for that, Dan. It was quite an interesting, candid conversation. I enjoyed it. It's easy to tell when you're chatting with a fellow podcaster. Good convo. Dan, where can the audience find you online?
Yeah, just like we mentioned before, got a new site called dappernocode.com. So you can go over there, just one word, Dapper Nocode, and you can kind of see all the different stuff we've done, the portfolio, the team, all that stuff. So yeah, dappernocode.com.
Okay. Before we pull the cuttings on this one, anything else you would like to get out there regarding your no-code business, regarding people looking to build one, or regarding anyone skeptical about the ideology behind your business and why you do what you do?
I would say, I try to do this with people a lot. Like, it's not always about the technology that you're building on. That's almost irrelevant to a point. It just allows you to move faster. But, you really have to make sure you're solving a problem. Make sure that you have product market fit, that you're actually talking to people who would pay you real money to build this thing or would actually purchase this thing. That's really the more important piece to building a SaaS or a marketplace or a technology tool. The actual underlying technology is nowhere near as important, whether you have no code or a template or custom coded solution, than the validation and the actual messaging and product market fit and the that type of piece to it. So don't skip that. Just don't, like I said, that the no code piece just kind of lets you go faster.
And fail faster, right? Could probably fail faster as well and ignore poor ideas.
And fail faster, yes, exactly. Just like you said, you can fail faster. So that's always a good thing. So just stay focused on those things rather than getting down the rabbit hole of, meticulously being like, well, should I use this platform or should I use that? It's like, it doesn't really matter at the end. You just need to be able to sell the thing and grow it and go. So that was what I would say.
Yeah, essentially create something of value for the society rather than something that's cool. I couldn't have said it any better myself. Thanks a lot, Dan. I'm sure you've left the audience with quite a lot to think about, to ruminate upon the next few days, weeks, and you might have some of them knocking on your door to build something. On that note, we bring this episode to an end. Thank you for watching till the very end, and don't forget to like, subscribe, share, follow, and all of that good stuff. Until the next episode, cheers.